Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month will feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Birgitta Visser. Please tell me I said that right, Birgitta?
Yeah, you did.
Okay?
Yeah, you said it just fine.
Everybody that listens knows I kind of stumble upon people's names, and I like to try to do it right when possible. Anyway, Birgitta is the author of the book, Becoming, Authentically Me. She is a soul empowerment coach, divine channel, and light language healer. Being Dutch, she is a bit of a bike messenger between the here and there, delivering messages from the many master teachers integral to helping elevate the consciousness of humanity and the planet. She has often stumbled through the darkness of her own trauma, but throughout her turbulent journey of overcoming, she decided to take the holistic route, walking through her highway of hell, facing her demons that kept her painfully incarcerated for the longest time. Birgitta hopes that people will awaken to what life is all about, unlocking their own potential and becoming authentically and wholesome within themselves. Wow, that was a pretty powerful bio. Did you have help writing that?
No, I did it myself.
It's pretty powerful. So say that in English for people that aren't so enlightened. How would you say all this in English or in Dutch? No, I'm just kidding. Just English.
So in layman terms, yes. So just to recap that in a nutshell, yes, I'm a soul empowerment coach, and it's all about empowering people to live their most authentic lives, because we don't. We're very much conditioned. We're very much programmed. We're very much stuck in a rut within our experiences and often don't heal them because we get stuck in that victimhood. And sometimes it's not just that, it's just we don't know how to move forward. And to get back to your own authentic nature, which I understand is a nightmare in the world that we live in, because, what does that even mean, right? So it's like I say, returning to that wholesome nature of who you truly are is merely shedding the layers like an onion peel, and it's getting rid of the ego, really. And the other thing, as I said, that I do, I'm a divine channel. Yes, I'm a bike messenger between the here and there. It's because I'm Dutch and the Dutch people cycle. So I channel the many masters up there and the light beings. And I'm a light language healer. So I always say to people, I speak gerbil language because it's galactic healing, but it's so powerful. I call it a shortcut to healing. And it's your mind on a conscious level. You may not understand it, but your soul understands it. And it's so powerful that many people that I've helped have, like, their trauma has been cleared. They don't suffer the aches and pains anymore. So, yeah, it's powerful.
Okay. Yeah. How come being authentic is so important to you?
It is important to be who you are and to be fearless, because a lot of people walk around with many labels, and then there's the judgment, the opinions of others, the shame, the guilt, fear, all these labels stuck to their minds, all that conditioning, because that's what society has led you to believe. I always say society is has been created in this artificial grid, and it's so hard to be yourself, because many people are afraid of hurting others as well. And it's like, but you have to just be true to yourself, because it doesn't matter what others think of you. It matters what you think of you. And that is so important. We've allowed ourselves to become disempowered, Karen. I mean, I've been there, and it took me many, many traumatic experiences to get to where I am today. And I'm thankful I went through it all, the whole bag of it, because I wouldn't be who I am today, of course. But that's the thing. It's just, that's why I always say to people, it's like, never be afraid to be yourself, regardless of others, regardless what others may think of you, because it does not matter.
I had a past podcast guest who said that us survivors are a little more enlightened than those who haven't survived trauma. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can totally take that.
Yeah, you take that. I take it too. I
do agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
with all the limitations we can get from trauma, I'm going to take this beautiful gift.
It is. It's trauma is the gift that keeps on giving, That's, I mean, you wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't gone through everything that you went through. Just as I wouldn't be who I am today. And many of your listeners that are listening that may be stuck is like, well, how do I get from where I am now to creating and living a far better life? And it takes time, and it takes looking at yourself, and taking that responsibility and returning to that state of your I am power, as I call it, empowering yourself.
Yeah, I like that you said responsibility. I tell my survivors that I work with, you're not taking responsibility for what happened to you. You're taking responsibility for your healing, yes, which is a big difference. Yeah. So people listening right now that are really suffering and they hear us saying, embrace your gifts because you wouldn't be who you are. We're in a better place than we were in our past, right? So yes, it's easy for us to say that. But somebody listening to you that's really suffering, how can you give them hope that they too can and have what they want and need in life?
So when I just said, it's always, we go through these experiences, and I always say this, experiences are not here to taunt us. They're here to help elevate our awareness. And yes, we go through, many people suffer a lot of trauma, and they say, well, I didn't ask for this, but your soul has asked for the lessons because of becoming more enlightened within yourself and to live a far more abundant life. And but you know what, Karen, when you're in the middle of trauma, because I've been through a lot of abuse, even in my childhood, and that's carried on in my adult life, it's hard when you're in the middle of it, but you need to really take a step back and say to yourself, is this the life that I really want? Many people stay with a partner when they get abused. Been there, done that, worn the t-shirt, that too. But I starved myself. I did that for donkey's years since, when I was a kid, but I was also abused when I was a kid. And people always say, yeah, but how can you forgive that person? Well, how can you not? How can you not forgive yourself? It's very important that you heal and that you forgive yourself and that you learn to love yourself. Because at the end of the day, life is nothing more than returning to a love for ourselves. That's what it is. And it doesn't matter what route you take. I took the holistic route, but for someone else, it might be counseling. It has to agree with your spirit. Mm-hmm. And for me, it started off with Reiki. That was my saving grace. And so it's the first step, as I said, is taking a look at yourself and understanding that, that you are unhappy and that you don't want to be in that situation anymore, and taking the steps to move forward in your life. And sometimes that's like taking a step forward and 2 steps back, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. There's no right or wrong in how you decide to live your life. It's merely the experiences that you clock up, as they always say, that you clock up to the beat of your own soul.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. So, Birgitta, about your own personal traumas, what do you feel comfortable with sharing with the audience today? So maybe if they're not connecting yet on the spiritual or holistic level, maybe they can connect with some of the pain that you've had.
Yes. So I will read. Yes. So, I mean, as a child, I think it's about 10 years. Yeah, I was 10 years old. I was abused by a friend of the family when we were living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, because I grew up in Singapore, Malaysia. And my parents didn't know. And this friend of the family would just continuously rub against me. And I just have to touch him. And as a 10-year-old growing up in the 1980s, life was very different to what it is now. You know, in some ways, it's more, people can talk about it a little bit more. In the 1980s, it wasn't like that. And so I kept it in. I didn't even tell my parents. And when we moved back to Holland when I was 14, I got bullied in high school because I was very skinny. And my dad died when I was 14, coronary heart disease. And he was gone from one day to the next. And that was very hard for both me and my sister. And I just suffered with low self-esteem, you know, and not feeling worthy of myself, didn't value myself. I mean, when I had to go to get to a classroom and a guy was in the corridor and I had to pass him, forget that, Karen, I would take another route. That's how scared I was. I had that ingrained fear of boys. And yeah, and my grades weren't the best. And so that was difficult for me too, because my sister was really, she has such a high IQ, bless her. But yeah, so from that, I mean, you know, my stepdad died in 2000 and I was 25. And not only that, I mean, you know, I rolled into my stint with drugs because I had no one to turn to, because he died from cancer in the throat. And I always helped my mom out. So my mom was leaning on me and I didn't have a safety net. And so I can say, well, I rolled in with the wrong crowd, but that's not really it. You know, I take full responsibility for that. And I nearly killed myself in one night because I took quite a few tablets, you know, ecstasy tablets. And I had suffered from blackouts. But the other thing that I suffered from, you know, because I was starving myself as well. And that started when I was about 13, 14. And, you know, when I would go to school, I'd just chuck away my lunch, just throw it away. But I would sit at the dinner table and just eat my food. And that just really continued for many, many, many years. But, you know, in the modeling industry, I was also assaulted because I thought I would give it a try, but I wasn't thick-skinned. And I would just go and to castings, and sometimes you'd have to wait 2 hours and then it was your turn and they'd look at my portfolio, go through it very quickly, take my comp card, and they say next. And that was very hard for me as well. It was really, really hard. And I wasn't the type to sleep around. And in fact, Karen, I was a late bloomer. My first boyfriend, I had at 21 and a half. And I mean, they were alien to me. Men were alien to me. And I didn't understand relationships at all. And so I rolled from one dysfunctional relationship into the next one. And I haven't had many, but they were all abusive in different ways. And when you're in the middle of that, sometimes it's really, really hard. But my wake-up call came in 2009 when my ex, who was from the States, came to live with me in Holland and got in bed with the Crips, the Dutch Crips. And then, yeah, he had his life threatened, and I saved him and I helped out the police, and they kind of saved him, and then they deported him back to the US. But in the meantime, I had my life threatened by the Crips, by the head of the Crips in Holland. And my mother got me out of Holland in the space of like 2 days, packed everything up and said, "You're coming to the UK." So I did. And that's when I took a whole box of ibuprofens because I just didn't want to go on anymore. I was so down in the dumps. And my mom said, "Birgitta," she's like, "why don't you go and see a counselor?" And I did. And the counselor said to me, "Birgitta, you know what? You're strong enough. You'll be fine." Now, what am I going to do with that? Nothing. And there I was. And I was like,
this is post-suicide attempt.
Yeah. And I was just like, what am I going to do? And so I needed to do my research because, when I incarnated, I didn't come with a cheat sheet. I had to figure it out. And so that's how I rolled into Reiki. And that was my saving grace. And that's, you see, for me, I took the holistic route because that agreed with my spirit. And so I studied many healing modalities, and I also became a Reiki master, and I helped many other people as well. But I had to take that responsibility, that accountability for my life, because I hit rock bottom. And that's not the only time I'd hit rock bottom, but sometimes you have to hit rock bottom, because when you hit that bottom of the rock, so to speak, the only way out is up.
The only way out is up. The only way out is up. What if someone listening says, well, no, you could always fall down?
Yes, you can, but isn't that a choice? You have to sometimes.
And it's not out, is it?
But you have to walk through that darkness. You really do. If you want a better life, then walk through that darkness and heal. Because on the other side of that fence, it's so much better and brighter for you. And I speak of experience, and everyone has different experiences, just like you have had different, you've had different experiences, and everybody heals differently. And there is no right or wrong in how you decide to heal.
And you're not saying it's easy.
No,
you're
it's
just
not.
Saying it's a choice we take responsibility for.
Yeah. It was tough for me.
When did you make the connection between the eating disorders you were struggling with and your trauma? When did you make that connection?
That connection came much later. So when I was seeing someone else in Florida, and I became so ill because he was so obsessive, and I was in the UK, I was working my socks off, and he had a reckless at the time. He's doing very well for himself now. I always say, those that we meet are reflections. They're our teachers. They teach us something. And so when I lost so much weight because I couldn't hold anything in, my stomach was just a mess. I lost even more weight. I was skin over bones. And I think that was another, because when I lived in Florida, he wouldn't leave me alone. I was like a prisoner in my own home. That's how bad it felt, because, he was living 2 doors down, and I was always taking care of other people and always choosing broken birds because I was such a broken bird myself. So I was looking for refurbishment projects. But I think at that point, I made that connection only because I walked through my past lives with an Akashic record healer. And I started to make that connection because I was stuck in that same pattern. I would work like a dog, right? I was a workaholic because I was running from my emotions, and I was starving myself because that's what I was good at. But it wasn't serving me because I was constantly running on adrenaline and that fight or flight mode, and riddled with anxiety and that fear, and just being a people pleaser all the time because I was afraid of hurting others. And I think it took me to that point where I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And that was the connection from the trauma to the eating disorder. I think many things slotted into place where I understood that I had conditioned myself all those years, and it was time to just stop running away from myself. I needed to change my life.
So anyone listening that thinks, oh, she makes it sound so easy to just heal. No, you've talked about trauma. You've talked about eating disorders. You talked about drug use. You talked about a suicide attempt. You talked about domestic violence. Like, you're clearly not saying that it's been a cakewalk for you. It's been challenging. Not. Yeah.
It has been challenging.
Yeah. So how do all those hurts and wounds, how do they help your coaching business, your empowerment coaching?
I've learned to speak my truth. And I think that's very important, that people just speak their truth and that they have that open space. where they don't feel judged, and where they can, how do you put that? Where they can talk. Yeah, exactly that, where they can talk without being judged. It's so, so important, because many times people don't give one another that space. And, when it comes to coaching, I always say to people, I'm merely a tool in the toolbox. You will still need to do the work. And, with some people, I do it through light language healing now. And the changes that I have seen where people just release their traumas has been amazing. And they are, sorry, go ahead.
She could tell I had something to ask.
Yes.
That shows me you read people well. I want to know a little more about what light language therapy is, please.
So it's so it's galactic healing, as I call it. And people will be like, what? You believe in galactic beings? Yes, I do. I work a lot with the very ancient beings. So even the Egyptian deities, like Isis, for instance, and many of the ascended masters that come through, and other beings. And I'm happy to give you a demo. It sounds very funny, but like I said, it doesn't speak to you on a conscience level because you wouldn't understand it, but your soul understands it. And that's the most important thing. And people normally really sink very deep when I do the light language. And then when I ask them to come back, then they come back. And yeah.
Are there like, let's say people are curious and want to learn more about this. Do you have favorite books that you recommend?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I can recommend, actually, because there are other things as well, like meditation. Very, and people are like, yeah, but I can't meditate. My mind wanders, but that doesn't matter. The minute
that's all of us. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So when you catch your thoughts that it wanders, then just go back to the breath. But there are some very good guided meditations. One of them is on YouTube by David J.I. And he does 20-minute meditations, getting rid of fear, of anxiety, worry, trauma, you name it. Very, very powerful. And all you need to do is just plug in your headphones and listen to the guided meditation and just follow it. And the other thing, which is also very powerful, is 432 hertz guided meditations, also on YouTube. And 432 hertz is it's the beat of the universe.
Frequency.
But it also, the frequency. And it also releases stress and it recenters you. That's very powerful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. One other thing I always say to people, you can ground yourself in your garden, go to the beach, hug a tree, whatever works for you. Some people like to draw. Some people like to go to the gym. There's no right or wrong. Whatever you want to do, whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah. So I want to jump to your book, if that's okay. Yes. I know you don't want to tell us I'm guessing you don't want to share everything. So you'd like people to purchase your book and support your work. But if you could tell us like a quick summary or what to expect with reading it, like why should we go buy
it? Wow. So in my book, it's cut into two, to be honest with you. So the first part talks about the very transformational times we live in. And it's been rough for a lot of people because so many things have been surfacing and it's like the world's falling apart. But actually, that's a blessing because it's a journey of healing for many if they choose to accept that, if they choose to embrace that. I talk about the fact that there is no death because we are eternal. We discard our physical, but our soul is eternal. I talk about my life and everything that I've been through. I introduced the Ascended Master Saint Germain that I work quite a lot with, and Archangel Michael as well. I talk about drug abuse, about mental illness, sexual abuse as well, and it's all infused with channeled messages of the many, many masters, and they look at life I mean, without them, I don't know how I would have pulled through the last couple of years, with a sense of humor, but I have. And they, even though the undertone is very serious, the way they look at life, and I mean, they use songs as well. It's all about, as they always say, it's all about returning to that love for yourself and embracing yourself and accepting yourself for who you are. Because Karen, how many people can look at themselves in the mirror and say, I love you? It's so hard for many.
Yeah. I haven't met too many people that can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. I'm working with I work with people all day who feel traumatized. So yeah. Hopefully part of their healing is that they're able to do that.
Yes. And that's the thing. I mean, trauma is a blessing, because if you didn't go through trauma, if you lived a very superficial life, let's say you were a millionaire, right? And you'd just be on your boat all day and you didn't really go through that trauma. And
some people are going to be okay with some people, Birgitta, are going to be really okay with that. They're like, yeah, yes, I was 6 and I was raped many times. I would just love to be on a sailboat instead.
Yes.
So what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, the people that have been on a sailboat or whatever, or they grew up really rich and went through nothing at all, right? Had no trauma. How enlightened would they be? Versus those who went through trauma and chose to heal.
Yeah, they'd be bored.
And so
their complaints would be small. Yep.
Yes. So that was just very, very black and white.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I said something is I work with people who they're stuck. They can't see that they're enlightened in some way yet. They're just so much pain right now. So I'm always a little sensitive to how they're feeling when they hear us talk about, getting to a beautiful place where we're healing. It takes a minute.
It does take a minute. I mean, like I said, for me, it didn't go overnight. It took many years, and I'm still learning every single day. My life is not a bed of roses. It's not always a bed of roses. We go through things, but I understand from my experiences, I often understand how to handle them better now, because if you want to put it that way, attained that wisdom, but it takes time to heal, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's next for you in your career? In your work, are you going to write another book? I know earlier you mentioned you're going to move to Spain, and I'm going to move with you.
Yeah. I made that choice, and I will be very honest. I had to do something different with my life. This year's been really tough for me because I took on an extra role at work. And even though it pays me a little bit more, it doesn't really matter because, the prices have quadrupled here in the UK. So, but I was just working like 60, 70 hours a week. And was that serving me? No, it wasn't. And I was like, I need to do something different with my life. This country just does not agree with my soul anymore. And I've wanted to move to Spain for a long time. So I've put the wheels in motion. I'm getting what you call in the States, your social security number. So I'm getting that sorted out so that I can, rent something in the next couple of months. So that takes time. And then, yes, I am writing my second book, but because I've been working like an idiot, it's like my inspiration is a bit gone. And I've made that very clear to work. I said, you robbed me of my joy. Because
I said that to my workplace too.
Yeah.
I left my full-time job on Wednesday this past week, and man, I feel like just got out of prison.
Yes. And it's just like, I work from home, so the hours are, it's like nonstop. And so, yes, I am making that move, and that's put my mind at ease. So right now I'm still working less crazy hours, but you have to do what makes your heart skip a beat? What's your passion in life, and follow that, because work is not everything, honestly. It's like deviating from your beautiful awareness, from that beautiful light of who you are. And it's, for me, it wasn't doing it anymore. And so, yes, I'm finally going to follow my passion. And my second book is probably going to be out either later this year or next year. And it's about my time in India.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Well, if you need someone to review any of your books, I'm happy to do that. A lot of people send me their books for reviewing. Yeah, I actually just started doing that for my podcast guests. Many of them have books, and so now I read them and review them. It's hard to get reviews sometimes, other than your best friend.
Yes.
I'm going to give my best friend a hard time. I'm not even sure she reads my stuff. I got to get with her about that.
Yes.
All right. And so anyone listening today that feels drawn to you and would like to work with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can reach me through my website, www.powersoulhealing.com. I'm not the biggest social media buff these days. I think that's just, I don't have time for that. But I am on Facebook and Instagram under Universal Light Warriors.
Universal Light Warriors.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time and blessing us with the wisdom that you have. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Karen. And for those listening, never feel that you're alone. Really, just if you're really suffering, then please do reach out to someone. And as I always say, if you don't feel love, know that myself and Karen love you.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.